Hello everyone, today let's continue the story of CEO James and LyTuDiep. After long and grueling months in Cambodia, James finally felt the light at the end of the tunnel. He hadn't come there to seek glory, but to shoulder the burden for his father, a journey weighed down with debts, disputes, and dangerous schemes. Endless negotiations stretched from day into night, nights spent under the dim glow of a single lamp at the conference table. More than once, he wanted to give up. Betrayals from partners and pressure from hidden enemies nearly drowned him. Yet each time exhaustion consumed him, the image of Diep and little Nay rose in his mind, like a guiding lantern, reminding him that he still had a home to return to. Thanks to his perseverance, James slowly untangled the knots. Debts were resolved, those who once tried to corner him and his father were forced to back down. The family business, once on the verge of collapse, was beginning to stabilize again. One late afternoon, standing by the window of his hotel room in Phnom Penh, James gazed quietly at the sunset stretching across the Mekong River. In that moment, he knew his chapter here was drawing to a close. The heavy responsibilities had been fulfilled, and now only one thing pulled at his heart: returning to Vietnam, returning to Diep and the little girl. James clenched his fists and let out a deep breath. This time, he didn't want to bring back empty promises, he wanted to bring back himself, to be with them in every day, every moment. On the day he left Cambodia, James wheeled his suitcase into the airport lobby with a spirit so different from when he first arrived in that land. His shoulders felt lighter now that the final knots of business had been undone, but his heart carried a heavier weight, a mix of anticipation and unease. As the plane rolled along the runway, the roar of the engines thundered through his chest, echoing the hurried beats of his own heart. Sitting by the window seat, James tilted his head toward the vast sky. Wisps of white clouds skimmed past the glass like flowing ribbons. Morning sunlight streamed through the frame, casting its glow on his gaunt face, on the deep-set eyes marked by traces of countless sleepless nights. Every wrinkle, every dark circle was proof of long battles, tense negotiations, and the loneliness that no one else could understand. He closed his eyes and let memories rush in. In his mind appeared the small village, the red dirt road leading to the modest house where Diep and Nay still lived. He saw himself stepping into the lush garden, hearing the breeze through the bamboo, seeing the pure smile of the little girl running to greet him. The vision filled him with warmth, but then a wave of fear struck. Would Diep still be waiting? Would Nay call him father? Or had time and his absence built a wall too high for love to overcome? A flight attendant passed by, placing a glass of water on the tray in front of him. James nodded in thanks, gripping the glass as if anchoring himself to reality. The cool liquid touched his lips but did nothing to quench the thirst in his heart, the thirst to hear that tender word, to see that trusting gaze. He realized then, this return was no longer about flaunting success, nor about proving power or status. What he was bringing back was not wealth, not victory, but his simple presence and determination to stay, to make up for all the lost days. The plane surged through thick layers of cloud. Suddenly, the captain's voice came through the intercom, steady and firm. "We are now entering Vietnamese airspace. Please fasten your seatbelts." In that instant, James's heart tightened. A shiver ran down his spine, both anxious and excited. He drew in a long breath, his hand gripping the seatbelt as though carving a silent vow into his soul. "This time, I will not lose them again." Outside, the clouds began to thin, revealing the S-shaped land glimmering in the dawn light. James knew this return would open a new chapter, one where challenges still lay ahead, but hope was waiting for him too. Inside the airplane cabin, James sat quietly by the window. Beyond the glass, the sky stretched endlessly, white clouds rolling like ocean waves. The morning light poured through the pane, casting its glow across his gaunt face, marked by days of unrelenting strain. His hands trembled slightly as they clutched the plastic cup, as if trying to hold on to a fragile sense of peace. The steady roar of the engines filled the air, but to James it resounded like a relentless drumbeat, pounding against his chest. He felt both eager and terrified, like a man about to step onto a crossroads from which there was no return. The speaker overhead came alive with a calm, firm voice. "We are preparing to land at Tan Son Not Airport. Please fasten your seatbelts." James flinched, his hands instantly pulling the belt across his chest. The sharp click of the buckle echoed dryly, making his heart race even faster. The quick, heated thumps in his chest felt as though the whole world was about to change in the next moment. He turned to the window and saw Vietnam's soil faintly appear beneath the thinning clouds. In only a few minutes, he would set foot again on his homeland, the place he both longed for and feared. Pressed back against his seat, James shut his eyes, his hands gripping the armrest until his knuckles turned white. The turbulence of descent made his tension worse. In his mind, questions stormed in. What kind of look would Diep give him? Would Nay call him father? Or had time and absence carved a distance that could never be bridged? His breath came in sharp bursts, as if he needed every gulp of air just to keep from breaking down. Meanwhile, in the quiet village, Diep was living through another morning as always. After tending to the garden, she returned to the kitchen to light the stove. Pale smoke rose, the scent of burning wood mingling with the fragrance of freshly cooked rice that filled the small home. Little Nay rushed in, carrying a basket of dewy vegetables, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Mom, can we have vegetable soup with braised fish today?" Diep smiled and nodded. She dropped the greens into a basin of water, then swiftly sliced some ginger to prepare lunch. In that rustic kitchen, the rhythmic chop of the knife and the crackling of fire blended into a rare, gentle harmony. For Diep, today was no different from yesterday, just another day flowing by in the steady orbit of life. The plane jolted sharply as it dropped lower, making the cup on James's tray spill slightly. His eyes snapped open, catching sight of the ground growing clearer below, houses, narrow roads, spreading like a painted canvas. A surge of emotion constricted his chest. At that same moment, Diep was tasting the vegetable soup, slowly blowing on it before pouring it into bowls. Nay stood beside her, eyes sparkling at the steaming pot of rice, waiting eagerly for the simple meal. In that humble kitchen, time moved peacefully and slow. Neither mother nor daughter knew that, high above the clouds, James was returning, carrying a heart scarred but filled with hope. He shut his eyes once more, letting memories flood in. He remembered the lonely nights in Phnom Penh, when even the mere thought of Diep bent over her garden was enough to give him strength to keep fighting. And now, as the plane carried him away from that land, the image of the village, the small house, and the child's laughter burned more vividly than ever. Yet alongside that yearning came the gnawing fear. Was there still a place for him in Diep's heart? Would Nay accept him, or see him only as a stranger? Back in the tranquil village, Diep carried on her day. The sunlight was soft, the last drops of dew glistening on the leaves. She crouched by the vegetable patch, her hands stained with soil as she plucked weeds and propped up stalks still leaning from last night's rain. Beads of sweat dotted her face, strands of hair clinging to her cheeks, but she paid no mind. These movements had repeated themselves for years, simple, steady rhythms of life, yet weighted with unspoken solitude. Nay skipped around the garden, a tiny wicker basket bouncing with each step. "Mom, is this much enough?" Her clear, bell-like voice broke the stillness. Diep looked up and smiled gently. It was a soft, kind smile, yet her eyes still carried a hollow space, the absence of a father, of the figure who had been gone for far too long. For her, today was just another ordinary day, with no sign that anything might change. On the plain, James opened his eyes and looked at the clouds drifting apart, revealing the golden glow on the horizon. His heart tightened. He wanted to believe that somewhere below, Diep was still tending her garden, nay still laughing innocently, and maybe, just maybe, there was still a place for him in their lives. He drew in a deep breath and whispered to himself, "This time, I am not returning with empty promises, but with my true presence, day after day, hour by hour." Outside, the village sky remained clear, the clouds drifting lazily, the breeze carrying the earthy scent of fresh greens. Diep had no idea that at this very moment, far above in the sky, a man was making his way back to her, carrying in his heart a vow never spoken aloud, that from now on, he would never leave again. The wheels of the plane struck the runway with a heavy thud, the screech of friction echoing as the cabin shook. James held his breath, his chest tightening as though he had just weathered a storm. When the plane finally stopped, he unclasped his seatbelt, his hands still trembling. His heart raced as he stepped out of the cabin, each movement weighed down with both urgency and dread. In the airport terminal, people bustled, dragging suitcases in a rush, while the loudspeakers echoed announcements overhead. Amidst the commotion, James felt strangely apart, detached. The noise around him faded into insignificance. All he could sense was the hollow ache in his chest, waiting to be filled. With every step, his heartbeat quickened, familiar, yet distant. When he pushed open the door and stepped outside, the humid heat of Vietnam rushed at him, making him halt. The air, the scent of the earth, the wind, so achingly familiar that his throat tightened. For a brief moment, his vision blurred. He wasted no more time. James hurried into a taxi and left the airport behind. Along the long road back to the village where Diep lived, he gazed out the window constantly. Rows of roadside trees, mossy rooftops flashing past, like fragments of a memory long lost. He clenched his fists and whispered, "Once I see them, everything. I'll start over." The closer he drew to the village, the more chaotic his heartbeat became. The red dirt path came into view, leading into the village, smoke curling lazily above thatched roofs. James felt as though his feet wanted to leap from the car and run, yet his shoulders sank beneath the weight of fear. Fear of Diep's cold eyes. Fear that Nay's smile no longer belonged to him. But beyond the fear, a fierce conviction burned. This time, he wasn't returning to make promises. He wasn't coming back to pass through briefly. He was coming to stay, to make amends, to love, to protect the home he once lost. The car turned down a narrow lane where bamboo rustled in the wind. Just a few more steps, and James would face the moment he had yearned for, and dreaded most. The car stopped on the dirt path. Slowly, James opened the door. His shoes sank into the red earth, dust swirling with the breeze that carried the scent of soil and smoke, the fragrance he had craved for years. He stood still for a few seconds, one hand resting on the car door, eyes fixed on the bamboo gate ahead. Across the small yard, he saw a familiar figure. Diep was crouched by the vegetable bed, her long hair falling over her shoulders, her face tilted gently under the afternoon sun. Each motion of pulling weeds, pressing soil was graceful, steady, as if nothing in the world had changed. Beside her, little Nay skipped around, hugging a tiny bamboo basket, proudly showing her mother the vegetables she had just picked. Her innocent laughter rang out, so pure it made James's heart tremble. He longed to rush forward, to hold the child close, to call Diep's name, but his feet were rooted, heavy with 1,000 fears. His breath came ragged, chest heaving as though after a long race. What if Diep looks at me like a stranger? What if Nay doesn't recognize me? The questions tightened around him like chains. But then his eyes caught the fleeting smile on the little girl's face, a smile as bright and unchanged as ever. In that instant, James knew he could not turn away again. He drew in a deep breath and stepped slowly toward the bamboo gate. The crunch of gravel beneath his shoes made Diep look up. Time seemed to stop. Her eyes locked onto his, stunned, unsettled, and carrying the storm of emotions long suppressed. Nay froze as well, her tiny hands gripping the basket handle tightly, her wide eyes fixed on the man before her, strange, yet hauntingly familiar. The yard fell silent, broken only by the whisper of wind through the bamboo. James stopped just a few steps away, his legs trembling, his voice hoarse as though he had lost it to the years. "Diep. I'm home." James's hoarse voice broke the silence. "Diep. I'm home." Diep froze. The bundle of vegetables slipped from her hands, leaves scattering onto the ground. In that instant, her heart seemed to stop. That sound, that voice, the one that had echoed through her dreams on countless nights, only to leave her waking to emptiness, now rang out clearly, right before her. Her eyes widened, trembling, filling with tears. But this time, she did not hide. Her hair tumbled loose in the wind, her small shoulders shook, and then she let the vegetables fall and rushed toward him. "James," her voice cracked. Little Nay, who had been skipping nearby, also stopped, staring in bewilderment. She didn't fully understand, but in her mother's eyes she sensed an overwhelming joy. When James dropped to his knees, eyes red, and stretched out his shaking hands, whispering, "It's Daddy, Nay. Daddy's home." In that moment, the child hesitated no longer. She let the basket fall and flung herself into his arms. A clear, ringing cry burst out, echoing through the garden. "Daddy!" James held her tight, his arms trembling as if afraid this happiness might vanish. Hot tears soaked the child's hair, while his heart broke open, healed at last after all those years. Diep stood still, tears streaming down her cheeks. She stepped closer, knelt beside them, and wrapped her arms around both father and daughter. No more blame, no more distance, only warmth and a rediscovered trust. The humble garden suddenly became sacred. Bamboo rustled, the evening breeze swept through, as if witnessing the reunion. After so many days apart, the small family was together again, not bound by promises, but by arms that held tight and tears of joy. That evening, in the little kitchen, the fire crackled merrily. Diep stood at the stove, stirring vegetables as the fragrance of garlic and onion filled the room. At the wooden table, James fumbled awkwardly with bowls and chopsticks, clumsy like a stranger, yet his eyes glowed with happiness. Nay darted about, helping her mother pick greens, glancing curiously at her father, and bursting into giggles now and then. On the table were only a few simple dishes, a bowl of vegetable soup, a plate of braised fish, golden fried eggs, and a pot of steaming rice. Not a feast of delicacies, but for James, it was the most lavish banquet of his life. Sitting down, he looked at the flickering oil lamp, at Diep's hair falling gently over her shoulder, at Nay's clear bright eyes, and felt his chest tighten with emotion. When Diep placed a bowl of rice before him, James bowed his head slightly, his voice trembling. Thank you for giving me this chance." Diep sat across from him, her eyes still damp, but her lips curved into a gentle smile. She said nothing, only nodded. That look was like a lantern in the dark, letting James feel he was truly forgiven, at least in part. Nay picked up a piece of egg and placed it in his bowl, her innocent voice ringing out. "Daddy, eat. It's delicious." James choked back tears. He lifted his chopsticks, hands shaking, and ate slowly, as if to etch each grain of rice, each salty sweet flavor into his memory. Every taste mingled with tears, bitter and sweet all at once. The little house filled with the sound of Nay's laughter, the clink of chopsticks against bowls, and the quiet glances exchanged between James and Diep. No grand words were needed, these simple moments were enough to mend some of the distance of the past. Night fell, and the bright moonlight poured through the window. In that moment, James knew this was the true happiness he had once lost, and now, with all his heart, he would protect it, through each day, each meal shared together. Dinner was over, yet the little kitchen still carried the faint scent of wood smoke and braised fish. James stood up to clear the dishes, while Diep quietly watched, her eyes tinged with surprise. The man who once lived in luxury was now clumsily handling the simplest of chores. Afterward, the three of them stepped out onto the porch. Night had fallen, and the full moon hung high, scattering its silver light gently across the garden. The steady chorus of crickets filled the air, blending with the cool breeze drifting in from the distant fields. Nay nestled comfortably in James's lap, hugging her small bamboo basket with a few stray sprigs of vegetables still inside. She chattered endlessly about her day, catching a yellow butterfly, the first chili pepper ripening on the plant, and the neighbor's cat sneaking a bite of fish. James listened intently, nodding at each word, sometimes laughing, sometimes just holding her tighter, as though afraid this moment might slip away. Beside them, Diep sat hugging her knees, her long hair glistening under the moonlight. She said little, only listening, occasionally smiling. In the brief glances she cast, the years of coldness seemed to have melted away, revealing a longing that had never truly faded. James lifted his gaze to the moon, his voice deep yet trembling. "I once thought I'd never have another chance, but tonight, sitting here with you and Nay, I know I've found my whole world again." Diep was silent for a moment, then turned toward him, her eyes glistening under the moonlight. She didn't answer, only rested her head gently on his shoulder. That small gesture alone was enough to choke James with emotion, as if the entire universe were silently blessing this moment. In the tranquil night, the three of them sat close together. No words were needed, only the bright moon above, the chorus of crickets, and the steady warmth of their hearts beating in harmony. After so many days apart, at last, a true home had returned.
Chào tất cả mọi người. Cảm ơn mọi người vì đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người video về câu chuyện tình yêu của anh Lý Tử Diệp và CEO James, cũng như là Lý Tử Na và CEO Alex nha mọi người. Mình hy vọng rằng mọi người có thể ủng hộ cho kênh của mình nhiều hơn trong những video tiếp theo. Và trong những video trước đó thì mình cũng đã lên rất là nhiều video rồi. Mình hy vọng là mọi người có thể ủng hộ kênh mình. Hiện tại thì kênh mình có lên nhiều nội dung về các mẹ đơn thân, nhưng hầu như đều xoay quanh cuộc sống yêu thương và những công việc hàng ngày của người phụ nữ bình dị ở Việt Nam. Mình hy vọng rằng có thể truyền tải đến mọi người những thông điệp sâu sắc nhất và ý nghĩa bình yên nhất. Hy vọng rằng mọi người có thể đóng góp cho kênh nhiều hơn để kênh càng ngày càng được trở nên hoàn thiện hơn, cũng như là bản thân mình cũng sẽ làm video hay hơn. Cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều. Hãy đón xem video tiếp theo nhé.